Today's session, we're going to be talking about preparing for an OSHA visit. Wow, this is an exciting time if you've ever had one, is to have OSHA show up at your door and say, hey, we're going to go out and inspect your facility. I've had a number of these through my career for a variety of different reasons, and they're things that will really make your heart drop. I've been sitting out at lunch, ordered my food and just waiting for it to arrive. And somebody from the office calls up and says, "Hey, an OSHA inspector's here. You better get here now." And it's something that if you're not ready, can really scare you to death and can also result in some bad outcomes for you and your organization. So today we want to talk about how can we be ready for that OSHA visit. So we'll dive in. First of all, just a quick statement on this. This is nothing personal. I'm talking about how to deal with an inspection from a regulatory agency coming in from outside. This is business. This is a risk to your organization, and if you are not prepared for that risk, it could be bad from a lot of different angles, and we'll talk about what those are. And so really, we want to be prepared, and this is something that is really, if you're the risk manager, or if compliance is your job, this is your business and your responsibility to be prepared for this, because it can be a major hit to your business, your organization. Well, we are living in a regulatory state. We have a massive growing regulatory burden that in this past year, 107,000 new pages of regulations went into the Code of Federal Regulations, the Federal Register. That's a massive amount of text for anybody to even consider keeping up with. But then the downhill side of that is you've got to be in compliance with all of those regulations. So it's something that we have to make a part of what we do, is being ready for compliance inspections. And I just want to say this: your inspection is coming, due to a number of different reasons. One of those we'll talk about in just a minute. OSHA is going to be at your door knocking. Let's talk quickly about federal OSHA versus state plans. So the federal government, part of the Department of Labor, has the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They're responsible for worker safety throughout the country, but in about half of the states are able to run their own program, and that's what we have here in the state of Utah. We have a division of the Labor Commission called Utah Occupational Safety and Health, and they run these programs for federal OSHA. Now we have our own regulations in a few different situations, but generally Utah Occupational Safety and Health is just running the program for federal OSHA. I think this is a great way to do it, because we're actually able to work with regulators here locally, and if I have a beef with what they're saying or doing, I can go and talk to the administrator. I can have my voice heard. So when I talk about Utah OSHA, that's who I'm talking about. They're the ones that will be inspecting us in the state of Utah. All right. And if you don't believe me, if you go to Google and you type establishment search OSHA or something to that effect, it will bring up this website, and you could go in and search for OSHA inspections in the state of Utah. Well, you actually can search the whole country, but you go in, you put in the state of Utah. On this screenshot that I put up here, I typed in county, because when I put city, it brought in some other things that were not related to local government agencies. But when I put in county, Pretty much all of these were local government agencies in the state, and you can see how often that they're out doing those inspections, the number of citations that were issued, and you can see the detail on what those citations were. So this is a place where you can kind of get an idea of what the frequency and what they're finding when they go out and do these inspections. Well, why might OSHA come out to visit you? Well, some of those are just programmed. They're planned. They go out and they do a certain number of inspections every year. Sometimes there's a complaint. Hey, there's an unsafe condition, either from an employee or from somebody, a member of the community that sees something and says, "Hey, I saw some guys out there without a trench box and they were working in a trench." So they may show up for that. Response to an accident. Now, that could happen because we called up and we notified them. We do have legal obligation for serious accidents to give a call within 8 hours. If we do that, they're probably going to come pay you a visit. I got a call from one of our agencies this last week. Hey, we just had a serious accident. What do I need to do? And I walk them through the steps to notify UOSH and and you basically have to plan that they're going to come out and inspect. Well, what if I don't call? Well, they're probably going to see that the accident happened, and they will then come out and visit you and give you a citation for failure to notify them of a serious accident. Sometimes there's a referral. I get a visit from a different regulatory agency and they see something that's unsafe. They may call up OSHA and say, "Hey, you ought to go visit those guys." Sometimes it's a follow-up. Maybe we had an issue and they're coming back to make sure that we did everything that we were supposed to do. And this last one is the reason why you are more likely to have an OSHA inspection as a government agency in the state of Utah, and that's called a local emphasis program. OSHA and its state plan operations have the ability to go in and say, we're going to focus some extra attention on a certain group of employers because we're having a lot of issues with things like one local emphasis program was on amputations. And so they looked at workplaces that had a lot of amputations, and they did a lot more inspections on those, trying to prevent that type of serious accident. In the state of Utah, our UOSH has a local emphasis program for public agencies. And what does that mean? Well, they took all of our local government agencies and the state as well, and they said we're going to put extra audits and extra inspections out there for them. It's a random pool of agencies. They take 50 at a time, and when they get done with all of those, they move on to the next 50. A lot of these are based on risk or history that you have. If you have a bad incident rate, they will come and see you earlier. And so just the question is, when is your inspection coming? Oh, and you say, well, how do they know what my incident rate is? Well, you also have a legal requirement that when you have an incident or an accident that involves an injury, that's the better word. When you have an injury that is an OSHA recordable, if that person goes to a doctor for a work-related injury, there is a reporting requirement for that, both from the doctor as well as from you. Now, for if you're in the workers' compensation pool at the trust, we actually do that reporting for you. But UOSH is going to take a look at that and say, "Oh, wow, this organization has a lot more accidents than they're supposed to, based on other organizations with similar exposures." Okay. All right. So who gets a visit? In this local emphasis program, they're looking at municipalities with a population greater than 1,000 residents, special service districts, and within public safety, all police departments, all fire departments, and all correctional facilities will be getting an inspection. Wow, that's a pretty good chunk. I showed you in that establishment search, I searched for county. counties weren't on the list, but because of having jails, because of having maybe fire districts within the county, they were included. But pretty much everybody that is a public agency is going to get a visit over time. Okay, let's ask a question about this. Can you get a citation if you're a government agency? And the answer is yes. You can get citations. Can you be fined for that? Because a private employer can get fined for violations of these rules. And the answer is comes in state law. It says the commission may not assess monetary penalties against any state agency or political subdivision. Well, what does that mean? Well, we won't have any financial fines come out of it. Does that mean, well, why do we worry about it? Well, we really need to worry about it because these violations and the citations have consequences. What are those consequences? Well, repeat violations may become willful violations. So if we did something, if we're cited on something, and then OSHA came back, or we had an accident around that, and they could show that we knew about it and we intentionally disregarded the health and safety of somebody. That could be a willful violation. That could actually become a criminal act, and you could be put into prison for that. The state legislature just a couple of years ago in the legislative session came up or adjusted how the process at which something becomes a willful or criminal violation for this, and they made it easier to become a criminal act. That's serious business. So don't blow off an OSHA citation just because there's no financial penalty, because it could become a lot worse than a fine. Another reason why we want to pay attention to these citations and visits from OSHA is that inspectors remember if they saw, ooh boy, that place was a piece of work. I need to go back there. And so let's make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, that we have a good safety program, and so when this happens, we don't have a whole stack of citations. Now, I realize that this is a really difficult task to get through a wall-to-wall OSHA inspection without having a citation because there's a lot of stuff out there. But we just don't want to have a list of those things. We want to get rid of the low-hanging fruit. And most importantly, we want to make sure that we've got a safe workplace for our team. Well, let's get ready. Here's a list of things that we're going to be going through, and I'll hit each one of those. I do have a lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to hit it pretty quick today. So things you need to know. OSHA inspections will almost always be unannounced. In fact, it is illegal to tip off somebody else that OSHA is coming to visit them. And so most of the time, they're going to show up unannounced. They will come to the front desk and they will present their credentials and say, I am an inspector from Utah Occupational Safety and Health, and I'm here to do a wall-to-wall inspection, or I'm here to do a follow-up for an accident, something like that. Sometimes other inspectors will schedule a visit, but don't expect it. Now, I have heard of a few cases where UOSH has scheduled a visit. I think they had issues of some of our agencies are not always staffed. We have kind of skeleton crews, and we may not be at a given location on a given day. And so I think after a few of those, UOSH decided that they might call and schedule some of their government inspections, but don't expect that. All right, prior to an inspection, we need to build a team. We need to create a response team that knows what they're doing if a regulatory inspection happens. We don't want people just wandering around. I was speaking with one of our members of the trust one day, and he said that they'd had an OSHA inspection. I said, "How'd it go?" He's like, "I don't know." And this was the boss. This was the chief executive of the organization. He said, "I don't know." I said, "You don't know? Well, what happened?" I said, "Well, they just told me that OSHA was here to do an inspection." I said, "Okay, let them go." and they just allowed the OSHA inspector to go out and wander around on their own. I had a little panic attack when they told me that, because they didn't have any guidance, they didn't have any control over what happened, and they allowed a regulator to just wander willy-nilly around their facility, potentially to become injured. Who knows what? And so we need to make sure that we've got a team that knows what's going on, and so we follow the right steps. Have a list of who that team is with their 24-hour contact information. So if an inspection happens on some non-work hours, we can get in touch with those folks so they can do their duties. We need to let everybody know what their duties are. There are going to be people that may be making copies, getting policies and things like that are requested by UOSH. There will be people that will walk along with the inspector as they do their walkthrough inspection. It may be other duties that we want to delineate as well. Let's make sure we've got a notification procedure for that team, and so that everybody knows when it happens, including upper management. Top level of management needs to know if a regulatory agency is in your facility. Know what your procedures are, and then train everybody on it. That's pretty critical stuff. So documents, what documents might we need? And can OSHA see our documents? Well, there are certain documents that they can see. There are certain documents that we may be able to restrict from them. Certain legally protected documents, but in general, they're going to have access to the majority of the documents that we have. And I would just say on that, make sure that you know what your retention and destruction policy is for your documents and follow that. Know where those documents are located. And I would always keep these documents separate from things that we really don't want the OSHA folks to find, or as they're going through, hey, here's all of our files, go ahead. That's a really bad way to go about it. We definitely, I'm not hiding anything, but if it's something that they don't have any need to see, I'm not just going to put it out in front of them. When I was doing this in facilities, I would make binders for each different subject and had those on a shelf. So when an inspector came and they asked about a particular subject, I pulled out that binder and I said, here. And I had tabs on those binders. And as they would ask for a document, I would find the tab and I would go directly to it. What does this do for us? Well, it does a lot of things. Number one, it makes it really easy to find. It shares with the regulator, with the inspector, that, hey, these guys know what they're doing. They've actually looked at this stuff. They're prepared for that. I probably don't need to dig terribly deeply after I get through three or four things, and they've got everything right there, and it's up to snuff. So a binder can really make your life a lot better, because those inspectors, when they see that you've got things together and figured out, they're not going to die. They're not going to dig too hard. Okay. All right. Separate those sensitive files, turning client privilege, things like that, and get them ready ahead of time. Here's some documents that you want to have readily available. Those are your OSHA 300 log, training records, your policies and procedures, safety policies and procedures. If you work in an organization that has certain chemical exposures, you want to have your sampling data available, your exposure data ready for that. And I would have proof that I have reported injuries. If you had serious injuries, I would definitely have some documentation around showing that we did the right thing on that. All right, Mike, I don't have any visibility on on questions or anything the way we've got it set up. So please feel free to dive in. Are there any questions so far?
Yep, no questions. You're doing well.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Inspectors can request copies of your documents, but there are a few things to think about around that. Those documents need to be within the scope of inspection. That's why in our on our opening conference with the inspector, we need to define what is the scope of the inspection. If they're just coming in looking for looking to respond to an accident or investigate an accident, it should be those documents should be around that. Now, at any time, OSHA can say, we've seen enough here. We think we need to make a wall-to-wall inspection on this because this place has got problems. Um, but let's try to keep it within that scope. If they ask you to give them a lot of copies, ask for time and agree on how much time. Hey, we will get that to you by the end of the day, by the end of the week, depending on what that is. Do not let the inspector take the originals because if you do, you'll never see them again. They will be gone. So copies are okay. Don't give them the original documents. Now, that doesn't mean they can't review your documents that you have there, but if they want copies, make sure that you make copies. Don't let them take the original. If there's a document where you're not quite sure whether they should have access to that or not, ask your attorney. Have a go bag together. This and that picture is not great. It's just one that one that I had. In your go bag, I need to have the tools that I would use in an OSHA inspection. One of those things we always used to say was have a camera available. In the old days, we used to have disposable cameras. Now in today's world, we have great cameras on our phones. Make sure you've got that with you as you're walking along. If the OSHA inspector takes a picture of something, you should take that same picture. If the OSHA inspector video something, you should do that as well. Now, the OSHA inspectors, in my experience, are always recording. In the old days, they used to have video cameras and they would carry that around with them. It was always on recording, whether it was pointed out towards anything or not. They're going to record the audio of that. I would just expect whether it's a video camera or whether they're using some sort of a voice recorder on their phone or somewhere else, you are going to be recorded throughout the entire inspection. So just keep that in mind. But if they take a picture, you take a picture. Have your contact in your go bag, have all those contact numbers, your procedure that we talked about. Have a clipboard with a legal pad and pens, paper, maybe some graph paper if that would help, because sometimes you're going to be getting into some details of if it's an accident, there's some measurements that are involved. Have a flashlight available, a tape measure, those types of things. And if you're in an industry where you may have chemical exposures or noise exposures, and you have the ability to do that, have your sampling equipment available. Because my recommendation on this is if the inspector takes a sample, an air sample, a noise sample, you should do the same thing. So we have our sample at the same time, and that way we get two different results from two different labs, and we can corroborate or dispute that if there's a problem with their sampling results, and et cetera. There could be a lot of things that would go into your go bag. All right. The inspector has the right to inspect your facilities and look at your operations. And really, that's all aspects, all areas of your facilities. Now, can we just close the door and say we're not letting them in? The answer is yes. You can do that. I think it's a really, really bad idea because if you say, no, we're not going to allow you in, that OSHA inspector will go and get a warrant to enter your facilities, and they'll come back with a bad attitude, and it's going to be a bad day for you. So I would just allow the inspector to do their inspections. Don't try to obstruct them in any way. They have the ability, the right to examine certain files, like we just talked about, and get copies of those files. They have a right to take samples, air samples, environmental samples, noise, those types of things. And they also have the right to record information about their observances. They also have the right to talk to employees. They have the right to talk to those employees in private, to take them aside and interview them. Now, if they ask to speak with management, including managers, supervisors, directors, leads, those types of people, if they're management, those interviews are can also be um, attended by your management. But if it's a line employee, they have the right to take that employee aside and have a private interview with them and get whatever information, record whatever that is. And just an FYI on that, we need to be very careful that we don't retaliate against any employees if they make a complaint about the workplace. If we retaliate, well, that's another violation, and it could be a big one. All right. As an employer, do we have rights? Um, yeah, we have the right to request identification, and as that inspector comes to your front desk, that should be part of the procedure. The receptionist or whoever greets that person should say, "Oh, you're a regulatory agency. Could I see your identification?" And then, if possible, make a photocopy of their identification. Now, if they want to argue with about it, I wouldn't make a big deal. But if you got a photocopy machine right there, just say, "Hey, can I make a photocopy or take a picture of your identification?" So we have that. There actually have been fraudulent inspectors go out to get into certain facilities. So it's always good to get their identification. You have a right to request an inspection warrant. Once again, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't force that because it's going to be worse for you. Um, and be advised by a compliance officer of the reason for the inspection. Now, we want to ask for that if they don't say why, but we want to define the scope. Hey, I'm here to investigate the accident that you had yesterday. I'm here to do a wall-to-wall programmed inspection under our local emphasis program. Have an opening and closing conference with the compliance officer, and we should request both of those. So one, we can define what are we doing, answer any questions in a conference room. And then when we're done, we want to have a closing conference to summarize what happened and gather information at that point. You have the right to accompany the compliance officers on the inspections in all cases, except for if they're doing an interview with employees. And FYI, we need to accompany them. Do not allow them just to go wandering out on their own. We need to be with them. All right. When OSHA shows up, have them sign the visitor's log, get business cards. If you have any kind of training that's required before they go to your facility, if you would do that for anybody else, make the OSHA inspector do that training. Some of you may have a quick video clip that says, or for training or a few slides online that visitors have to go through before they can go into your facilities. Make them do that as well. Make sure they're wearing the appropriate PPE for that you require where they're going to be doing the inspection. Um, and they will have PPE with them in their vehicles, and so you can just say for if you're going to walk into this production area, treatment area, whatever it may be, you need to wear this for your personal protective equipment. Um, Take the inspector to a conference room and just say, we've got to get our team together. Ask them to wait. They're not going to wait a long time, right? But let's get the team together as soon as we can. And you could say that, hey, you know what? You showed up at 12 o'clock and our team they've gone out to lunch. It's going to take them a few minutes to get back here. Be polite. Don't share information at this point. We want to get to our opening conference. And at this point, it's really important that we notify the top manager of the organization, whoever your chief executive is, because they need to know that a regulatory agency is in the building. Do we need to notify our attorney? Well, kind of depends on your situation and depends on what's going on. Make sure our front desk reception area knows the proper procedures on this and we don't just let them wander around. Do you need an attorney? Can you believe Mike did this to me? I got to keep him off of AI. I'm not nearly that chubby. Anyway, all right. When do you need an attorney? If OSHA shows up and they have a search warrant, or law enforcement shows up and they have a search warrant, you need to notify your attorney right now. If there's alleged criminal activity that's taken place, you need to notify your attorney. If FBI, Department of Justice, EPA, I would notify your attorney for that. Should you bring your attorney in to go through this? My recommendation is that you don't, unless it's one of these situations where there's alleged criminal activity, something like that. If they bring their attorneys, you definitely want to. But my experience is if the attorneys come out, what could have been a fairly routine inspection becomes a lot more contentious. And so I would say notify the attorney, but don't necessarily bring them in. And that's a discussion you want to have with your attorney ahead of time. All right, working with inspectors. Treat the inspectors with courtesy and professionalism, right? They're just out doing their job. They're trying to help us make our workplaces safer, but also realize that it's a risk to your organization. And so um, be truthful. And that goes without saying in most things, but we don't want to lie. We don't want to obfuscate things. But I'm also not going to volunteer information. If they don't ask it, well, sorry. You didn't do your job. Yes and no are perfectly appropriate answers to many questions, and you should leave it at that if you can. Don't volunteer information. Oh, you think that was bad? Well, you got to go over there and take a look at over there. And don't speculate, offer opinions, or anything like that. It's just the facts at this point. Realize that that this inspector is gathering information and they're making a case against you. So don't volunteer any information, but be truthful, be respectful, all of those things. But also don't give them an opportunity to write more citations for you. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or I need to get back with you. If you don't know the answer to the question, it's perfectly appropriate to say, I'll get back with you on that when I know the answer to that. But then do follow up. All right. In your opening conference, ask the inspector why we're here. What's the scope? Ask where they want to go, who they want to see, and write all of these things down. And then you can start working on that. If they have specific personnel that they want to talk to, um, take a note for that and send somebody to get those people. Right. So we can bring them in. Ask about what documentations they want to see. If you can limit the inspections, that's great. If they come in and they say, "Oh, I want to look at this accident scene," well, don't take them through the entire facility. Take them directly there, or get them just to that accident scene, and don't wander through everything. Just remember, the inspections can expand, and so if we were walking through an area and they see something that catches their eye, they could expand it to be a wall-to-wall inspection. Don't obstruct the inspector. However, I will say this is not obstruction. I don't necessarily. There are some techniques that you can use that will limit your exposure. One is the path that you take to go to where the inspector wants to go. You don't have to walk past the really bad area to get there. You may take a different route. Um, if your eyes go somewhere, the inspector's eyes will probably go there. So if there's a problem, don't look at it. These are some simple techniques that I may or may not have can tell you whether they work or not. I may or may not have some stories to tell you about those when we're when we're in a different setting. Determine the scope, always request, limit the scope, um, and request a closing conference. Say, when we get done with this, we want to have a closing conference, um, and then go through the site safety requirements, those and procedures, those types of things, personal protective equipment. Trade secrets probably doesn't apply to us, but if there is something that we don't want that information getting out to be in the public, we should definitely identify that. This is a process that is proprietary. So if you take videos in there, we want to protect that as a trade secret. Always escort the inspector. My recommendation is have two of your people for each inspector. Why is that? Well, if you have to send somebody to go get something or get somebody, then you can send that second person without dragging the inspector all through your facility. So I always like strength in numbers there. It gives us the ability to do things. Hey, can you go get so and so? And bring them over. Take detailed notes and photographs as you go along. If they take a picture, you take the same picture. Write down what the start and end time is. If the inspector makes a comment on something, write that down. We're going to follow up on those comments. If they ask a question, do that. Um, and don't prevent employees from voluntarily speaking with the inspector. That is their right. And but just a reminder though, supervisor, manager interviews are not private. We can have our people in the room when that takes place. If the inspector notes an issue, a problem, fix it. That's not admitting there's a problem. It's really showing good faith that you're willing to fix those things. If there's an employee in an area where they ought to be wearing safety glasses and they're not, take care of that right now. That's another reason why having that extra person per inspector is good, because you can have them go and take care of some of those issues as you see those. If there's an issue that the inspector brings up that's imminent danger, stop the process and lock it out. Prevent that from going forward, because we're going to go back and we're going to remind the inspector of that when we get done. Once again, if the inspector takes a sample, you take your own sample. Get a split sample of whatever it is. It's an environmental visit, not just OSHA. You should do the same sample and send it into your lab. All right. Closing conference. Ask the inspector about their findings. What findings did you have in this inspection? Now, they're not going to say, I'm going to give you a citation on this, this, and this. They're going to say, well, I have concerns about this, this, and this. They're not going to commit to a citation. They will go back to their office and talk with the administrator there and say, here are my findings. They'll review the video, and the pictures that were taken, and all of those things, and they'll make a decision about those things. But at this point, you can find out what their concerns are. When you know what their concerns are, you can respond to those concerns or clarify misunderstandings. If they didn't understand what the process was or didn't understand something about that, this is your opportunity to clarify that, and that may prevent the citation from coming back. So let's fix those misunderstandings right now, and we really got to know what those concerns are. If you just think, yeah, it seems like it went pretty well, and then a week later you get a stack of citations that comes in, that's a bad thing and a bad look for you as well. So make sure that we're asking the questions. There's no reason to argue, debate, or agree that a non-compliance exists. So if we can point out things that clarify it, that's great. But Arguing isn't going to help you at this point. There's a time for that. Um, and then explain or summarize the corrective actions and just remind them, oh, you know what? Yeah, I agree. We saw that, but remember, we fixed that, right? We abated the situation while you were watching. Sometimes those don't come back as citations because they were abated. Sometimes it's just showing good faith that we've done the right thing. Once again, resolve misunderstandings, clarify what actions, if any, need to be taken. What would you say we need to do to deal with the concerns that you have? And then we're going to respond with that. Identify suspected violations, and if you're asked to sign anything, consult your attorney. Generally, they're not going to ask for a signature on anything, and they're probably not going to give you any information at this point. They're just going to take what they get, and they're going to leave. And within a matter of generally weeks, you'll hear back from them. So once you're done, if you're the one that's heading the team, you should prepare a summary memo to your upper management. Here's what happened. They showed up. Here's the information that we need to gather, and we'll put that into a memo. I wouldn't say in there, yeah, we're really in trouble on this, or yeah, this is a non-compliance. I would just say these were the observations that the inspector made. You can talk to your attorney about this. This is something that I always did. I would draft a confidential memo, send it to our attorney as under attorney-client privilege. It may or may not be privileged, but it's something you can look at. I wouldn't make conclusions or opinions. Just state the facts. Here's what was observed. Here are the things that we shared with them, and then and then you're going to take some actions at that point. Here's some follow-up. If they noted a non-compliance, get support, get some help on that, because it may be something that you need to learn some more about. That's what Mike and myself are for, as well as other professionals that can help you understand, help you get a policy. I've sent out a lot of policy boilerplates post OSHA inspections where people said, "Hey, OSHA was just here. They had a problem with X. Can you send us a policy on that?" Sure, no problem. We'll email that out to you. Track those items to completion. So we make sure that I want to be done with whatever the concerns were before a citation ever shows up. Don't let these issues go unresolved, right? We want to show that we are exercising good faith and we are getting things done to make our workplace safe. And then discuss this as a group, but you may want to say, hey, when you were send a letter and say, when you were here, you had these concerns, they're all taken care of. We did this, and this, and those have all been taken care of. It sometimes takes a while for OSHA to get around to sending those citations out. So if I can show an abatement letter before they get to the point of writing that citation, it may not show up. If a notice of violation is issued, make sure that you respond within the time frame. If you're communicating back and forth with regulatory agencies, do it by certified mail. Make sure we've got receipt request on that. We do all the stuff so we verify that they got the information that we sent. So if we're sending some letter communication, copy that. Keep track of the certified mail on that, so we can document that they got the stuff that we're talking about. What if you get a citation? Well, this notifies you of alleged violations. You've got an opportunity to dispute that, but you must post a copy of that near the location of the violation for 3 days. That's per OSHA regulations. You have the ability to request an informal conference. That's basically where you go to Salt Lake, sit down with the OSHA administrator and plead your case and say, hey, there's your inspector didn't understand it. They missed the boat on this. And I've had that. I got a citation one time for not providing training in Spanish to an employee who was injured. And they gave this citation. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah, he did have it in Spanish, and so we had an informal conference. Went in with my stack uh, of training materials that were in Spanish, with the employee's name signed on there that they had done that training in their language. And anyway, it's your opportunity to go in there and contest that citation, and sometimes they go away. If you got fines, that's the time that you can negotiate fines. But like we said, we don't get those as governmental agencies. Employer rights. You can request an informal conference. You can file a notice of contest of citations. This is kind of where not kind of, this is where the attorneys get involved. If it's a notice of contest, sometimes that informal conference is the best possible place you can get those to go away at that point. Sometimes you can apply for a variance. Well, it didn't fit. I know there's a standard, but we need a variance from that. That probably doesn't happen very often. Employees can talk with OSHA. They can request an inspection. They can remain anonymous. They can object to the citation abatement periods and seek safe workplace without retaliation. And you cannot retaliate against them for any of these things. That means termination, or put them on a bad shift, or demote them, things like that. All right. Just a couple of things on preparing for OSHA. Use a team approach. Make sure that people know what's going on, because your risk manager may be on vacation when they show up. So the team needs to be available. Know what your legal requirements are. Identify where those issues are. If we don't know exactly what we need to do, use experts. Call people like Mike and myself to provide information, to provide guidance, to help get you in compliance and keep people safe. And then build your plan and do those things that we need to abate the situation. Here's just a list of most common citations, and I've gone longer than I anticipated on that. But these are the areas where you better have a policy, you better have training, you better have the equipment in place, because they are going to look at these very closely. Just remember, it will happen. Be ready. Know what your risks are. This is important. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we keep our people safe, that we have a good safety program that allows people to go home in good health and as safe as that when they got there in the morning. All right. I think that is the information. Mike, do we have any questions?
Don't have any questions now, folks. If you've got a question, go ahead and type it here into the chat box. We can get Jason to answer that for us. Man, that's some good stuff there. OSHA
Whew.
coming to visit, and that's a lot of things to be aware of. So, folks, if there are questions there, please don't hesitate to type them in the chat. Get in touch with Jason or myself. We are happy to help however we can, helping to understand OSHA visits and what's required of us after they come. Please get in touch with us. Let us know how we can help. But Jason, I don't see anything right now. You must have covered it
All
well.
right. Well, folks, if you do have questions, if you do have an OSHA inspection, give us a call. Mike and myself are more than happy to help consult you on that, give you some information to help out, give you the boilerplate policies and procedures. Occasionally we'll know ahead of time when that happens. I'm not promising that we can be there, but I've done that in the past, where we'll walk along with the OSHA inspector and be able to be there to help out. I'm thinking back on one we made. We dealt with a lot of things that would have been findings, but we dealt with them at the time. I came in with my binder full of stickers and all the things that they might have needed, and we put them up, and it was like, okay, well, it wasn't there, but it's abated, and so OSHA was like, okay, we'll move ahead with that. All right. Be prepared. Take the time to go out and be ready for what's coming. Thanks, folks. Go out and have a safe day.
Thanks, everyone.